Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the first episode of the VRNation Station podcast, the go-to platform for vacation rental professionals across North America. We're thrilled to have you here as we embark on this journey together. My name is Jamie Hansen. I'm the Director of Business Development at Cabino, and I will be the moderator for today's session. At VRNation, our mission is simple yet powerful: to provide education, support, and to foster excellence and trust in the vacation rental industry. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just starting out, this is your space to learn, connect, and grow. We are going to hear firsthand stories from some industry professionals and community leaders who have stepped up in times of crisis, right? We got a lot going on in this country, especially in 2024, the year that doesn't go away. We'll discuss the unique role our industry plays in providing safe temporary housing during emergencies and explore ways we can all make a positive impact. Plus, we want to hear from you. If you hear these conversations, you have thoughts, please share your thoughts, stories, or questions as we tackle important topics together. That being said, let's get started. Welcome to VRNation. All right, so that's done my intro. Let's see, we'll get out of the formal and more into the informal. But what I'd like to do is first, I want to do some introductions. So in our top middle tile, we have Matt Testall. He is the president of VRNation. He is also the owner of Family Time Vacation Rentals. Matt, if you want to maybe just introduce yourself, give us a little brief why you got into property management.
Yeah, Jamie, thanks for doing this, and happy to be here. Our business was born out of another crisis in 2007, 2008, the financial crisis. We had a little cabin in the mountains of southern Utah. Came to a point where I was in the mortgage banking business, and we needed to rent it out just to kind of keep it going. And so I talked my wife into letting me rent it out. She begrudgingly agreed. I said, it's either sell it or we're going to rent it. And she goes, okay, rent it. So that's how it started. And that grew from one property to, we found out a lot of people in the area were going through the same thing, and they needed some rental income as well. And that's how it grew from southern Utah to central Oregon and Idaho now.
That's good. That's good. All right. Well, why don't we'll just keep going. So why don't I go to my other, the bottom left tile for me, Tara Lorimer. She is the vice president of VRNation, and she is the owner of Luxury Getaways. Tara, maybe talk about a little bit why you got into property management.
Hi, Jamie. I got into property management in 2008, also out of, I probably should say a health crisis, but in our family, we had some changes with a new baby and could no longer travel. And we couldn't go to our typical destinations. We couldn't fly, couldn't go to hotels, we couldn't go to restaurants. So we started exploring short-term rentals more and more, and ended up building one for ourselves and one for some other clients, and just started a business out of it.
Excellent. So why don't we go to Heather Van Wee. Heather, maybe you want to talk a little bit about yours, but so Heather is also a director for VRNation, and she is the owner of Cottages on the Key.
Yes, thank you very much, Jamie. I have a very similar story. Again, same year, 2008. I think everybody might remember that year very well. I might be aging us a little bit, but whatever. Yes, I actually got into the business to save my own home. My father and I started the business in 2008 for the same reasons. He had just gone through throat cancer, had been battling that for many years, and it was very difficult for him to find a typical job because of his health conditions. And I had a renovation company, unfortunately got very deeply rooted into the flipping craze that was happening in Florida at that time. So I lost a lot of what I had, in my renovation company. So unfortunately, not having any more work and not being able to afford my mortgage, and the same thing with my father, we decided to put our homes up for rent and tried to do it as an annual situation, but it wasn't working because of the amount that we would not be generating in order to get us through the next phase of our life. So we basically decided, well, let's try this very avant-garde thing here, where the vacation rental business that is just now starting in Siesta Key and in Sarasota. And let's see if we can actually salvage something from this and at least save our homes. And that is exactly what we did. And it was, a rough time. Everybody remembers that time. So what happened for us is that our neighbors began to become aware of what we were doing, and they also wanted to enjoy the same benefits, to try and keep their homes Sometimes it was their second homes. And then, of course, as guests are coming into town, they're falling in love with this area. And they decide that why not go ahead and purchase something here, because it's a great time to purchase. So we built our portfolio quite quickly from 2009 and onward. And that is exactly why we are here today.
That's a great story. That's a great story.
Thank
I really
you,
like
thank
that.
you.
Cool. And in case it didn't come up, so Heather is from Florida, obviously Siesta Keys, Florida. VRNation, we are national, actually international. We have some Canadian companies as well. And Tara's in Mount Baker, so she's up in Washington. And Matt, of course, is in multiple places, but essentially out of Oregon. So that's cool. But last but not least, let's talk about John Pickard. John is the owner of Beach Nest Rentals out of in California. So John, maybe talk a little bit about how you got into property management and your story of it.
Thank you for having me, Jamie, and it's great to be here with all of you. Very similar story to Heather, uncannily similar. My mother-in-law was renting out a place. She had a place if she could stay up top, and then she had a downstairs unit, and she would like move up there and rent that out. And that was started back in 2005. And then she's actually my stepmother-in-law. She met my father-in-law, and they started dating in 2006, and it went very well. And they wanted to get married and move to Montana. So we got involved in late 2006, and she had like 4 or 5 properties, same situation. And just she managed herself. Her neighbors said, "Hey, would you mind managing mine?" and so forth and so on. So when they got married and left in 2007 up to Montana, they sold us the 5 properties they had. And at the time, my wife was winding down her commitments over the hill in the Silicon Valley. And so we kind of bought this, say, well, we'll give her a project to do, right? And so I had something to do and have fun. So that was great. And then, of course, 2008 hit, right? It was crazy. All of us went through what we went through. And, one thing that one term you guys might remember, staycation. You guys remember that term? Staycation. Nobody could afford to go anywhere, fly or do anything. Everybody was hurting, but hey, I might be able to go stay somewhere for a weekend or a couple days or something like that. And so I'll just drive somewhere and do a cheap vacation in a vacation rental. Cause at the time it was a lot easier to do that than go to a hotel. And so we decided to, continue going with that model. But the other thing that was just an unintended consequences of those times was so many other people that owned those second homes were going to lose those second homes unless they could figure out what to do with them. So we went from 5 properties to like 22 properties in 1 year, just by basically people saying, "Hey, can you manage this for us so we don't lose the property?" And we're like, "Yeah, sure." "Oh, it's just going to be temporary because we wouldn't, we want our house back." "Okay, that's fine. We'll help you out because we're all in this together." But of course, 10 of them, 15 of them are still with us since 2008. They like what we do. They like the service. And of course, they like the money, and they like the freedom of being able to come and use their house whenever they want, as well as not only covering their expenses on the house, but actually putting money in their pocket. So it's just worked out really well. And, here we are. This is the 20th year that Beach Nest has been in business. So it's been great. It's been a ride.
That's awesome. Again, these are great stories. It's a bit humbling, for me, right? Because this is our inaugural podcast, so nobody knows who I am anyway. So I'll just do a quick intro of myself. I'm JD Hansen. I have only been in this industry for 2 years now, right? So I'm a business development director, which from day to day, you head scratch a little bit, wondering what exactly that role is doing. But the coolest thing is in the 2 years that I've been a part of this industry, I've also been a part of VRNation. A lot of what I've learned are from people here on this podcast. So I think it really just calls it out. Like I don't have any dramatic story other than I ran away from corporate America to join the circus. But ultimately, it just boils down to I love the industry because I love the people. It's truly a rarity when you join an industry and people are looking to help you more than take advantage. And I think it's just something that's truly special and I'm blessed to be a part of. So I just want to say thank you all in advance. But again, I just want to make sure everybody knows who I am. I work at Cabino. Cabino is a property manager. We are in Idaho, eastern Idaho, out of Island Park. So it's right outside West Yellowstone. We have properties that are primarily located around national parks. So we're kind of national parks niche. So we're talking about today, how we as short-term rental property managers provide safe temporary housing during emergencies and ways that we can make a positive impact. Now, John is from California, right? Heather is from Florida. And obviously, California and Florida have made their way to the news more so than just the usual reasons. So why don't we maybe start and talk a little bit about that? Maybe Heather, if you want to just talk about your experience with the hurricanes, I think that it truly is remarkable. When we talked, I thought the story was worth revisiting. So maybe tell us a little bit about how that went for you.
Well, this was definitely 2024 was definitely a doozy of a year because we're used to hurricanes. We're prepared for them. But I have never felt more like we're closer to the Caribbean status of how many times they can get hit in one season than in 2024. So just to back up and explain, where I am in the southwest coast of Florida, we rarely do get hit, but when we do, we take it very seriously. We always will. But to get hit with 3 hurricanes and have some sort of devastation that occurred from 3 different hurricanes back to back was quite trying. And in this area, we lost about 2.5 months worth of actual bookings where we had to refund back to every guest. That's because it's in our area. It's mandatory that, if you can't host a guest, you probably need to either provide some sort of refund back or some sort of credit for the future, whatever is set up. And of course, most of us have travel insurance that we offer as well. But actually, we had 5 actual flooding events to include the 3 hurricanes. And I have no idea how this could have possibly happened to us, but we had prior to the hurricanes, we had this very crazy flooding event that occurred. And then a flooding event prior to that, which was very typical for certain areas of our barrier islands. So, not a big deal. But yes, we had, for a period of since June until November, we had a period of, loss towards certain homes on our portfolio. And then after the last one, which is Milton, I believe he was the last one that came through, that was really terrible. It was one of those things where we didn't have enough time to prepare our county with cleanup and that type of thing from Helene to Milton. So the damage that was caused by Milton was significant only because there was a lot of debris still left over. So yeah, the way that we are, typically prepared for these is we obviously evacuate guests and make sure that they have enough notice to get out of this area. And then that's actually quite an easy process for us. Most guests do want to evacuate, and then you simply give them back the refund of the portion of their stay that they can't enjoy. But the most significant impact that we have is on the owners, because we are a full service property management company. Outside of just doing vacation rentals, we actually do manage their properties and all of the vendors for them. So they rely on us to take care of any of the necessities that come with, dealing with a hurricane event. So we have protocol in place. Actually, we have an entire book that we've put together for hurricanes. I would be more than happy to share that. It's pretty detailed. So if anybody actually wanted to offer, if I could offer that to anyone that has to deal with natural disasters in their areas, I would be more than happy to share that because it's a game changer. It actually makes your operations team so much more efficient. The communication that they have, the opportunities to communicate, and the way that we do it has a lot to do, of course, with the tools that we use and the technology that we use. But it can be replicated no matter what, and across someone who only has 5 properties or someone who has 300 properties, whatever it is. This thing is basically a pre-hurricane and post-hurricane protocol, or SOP. And it's very detailed down to just the tiniest little details. Even like for instance, our handymen have to go in and shut down, the electricity, the power to the area. They have to take the trash and remove it. They have to take the furniture away from the pools, like just to the very finest detail.
So a question for you on that. I mean, there's so much information here to pick through, right? So I know that we've also had conversations. Tara had some examples of emergency kits and things like that. But one of the things that jumps to my mind immediately is, I think through the devastation, right? So here, I'm a Midwestern guy. And of course, the fact that anybody could live in Florida and not get hit by hurricanes, that's educational for me, right? I was like, oh, you're in Florida, you get hit by hurricanes. But the question is really more along the lines of staff, right? So, these people aren't just impacted because they're working hard, but, their homes are impacted. They're where they live. Like, how do you manage through their own personal tragedy as well as address your own property management situation?
That's very tough. And I have to tell you that it really does come down to the dedication of our employees and our vendors that are, part of this network, part of this resource kit, if you will. What we do like to do is, I think I should back up and say, we have about 10 to 12 different handymen. We have about 12 different housekeeping companies that we use. And then we have about an employee, count of about 20. What we try to do is do it in shifts so that we give people enough time to get their own homes ready, prepare for their families, and then there is a period of time. Typically, it's outside of a 72-hour window, but sometimes it cannot be. It depends on the hurricane status itself or the trajectory of it, I guess I should say. But we try to get our people to evacuate, pre 72 hours of a hurricane event. But yeah, it's all about prep. We have to actually, unfortunately, predict for the worst. So there's a revenue loss no matter what, because we're going to predict for the worst. If we're in the path, we're going to go ahead and evacuate, and that gives us enough time for our people to do what they need to do as well. But they'll do it in like a different type of like 2 people will be on, then 2 people will be off, and then they just kind of help mitigate everything together, but also have enough time to take care of their own livelihood. But I do have some people that if they're not evacuating, and there's a lot of hardcore Floridians that do not want to evacuate unless it's a Cat 4 or something greater. They're just dedicated. They're absolutely dedicated. I know you guys have the exact same situation in your own staff, and that's just because we are all in hospitality, and that's the service heart. That's what everybody wants to give. So yeah, but we try to keep everything very safe. The protocol involves that. It kind of gives a breakdown. And of course, if you're in a different area where fires are completely different, I don't even know what to say. I'm just grateful that we at least have some notice of a hurricane. Fires are
Right.
totally different, but
Right.
Again, I think that you could probably take that information and apply it to your own area, your own, needs, basically.
Makes sense. Anybody else have questions? I don't want to hog the questions. I know I see, John, you have some thoughts. Tara, I know that you've got some questions as well. So, I mean, shoot, I'm not going to monopolize any of Heather's time. If you guys have questions, please feel free to jump in.
So a lot like what happens here at Santa Cruz, we've definitely had our own share of natural disasters in the last 3 years in Northern California. And my heart goes out to my fellow Californians in Southern California right now who are just going through basically just an Armageddon and an inferno. But you have to have a procedure in place to be able to help the displaced, your displaced community. So I guess, Heather, what I was asking is in the plans you have, and the inventory you have left, if you have any left, how do you manage helping your displaced community find a place to call a temporary home, and how do you handle that? I'll share with you how I handle it, but I'd like to hear what you did first.
It's interesting. In the 15 years that we've been here, we haven't actually had a hurricane event to this nature, and so while I've adopted protocol, that is a whole other story, John. Like that you're saying is, how do you actually take care of your community when your community has been devastated to that point? And I would say that to each and every one, they have their own moral, compass when it comes to this type of thing. But what we did is, because we had homes that were perfectly fine. They were not flooded. The majority of our portfolio flooded. So they had to go through remediation. They had to go through FEMA. So we were down for quite a bit. But for the homes that were not down, we basically decided to hold on booking guests because our community, I can't tell you how many phone calls I got from local residents that just needed housing while their homes were being renovated. So I spoke to quite a few of my owners. Many of them were willing to give up their homes for nothing, just to be able to help. That's their involvement. That's what they wanted to do to try and be part of this community. And that was beautiful. That was a beautiful thing. The other part of my portfolio was definitely willing to allow housing at a very reduced rate. So basically just covering the costs that they had. And, so we closed down and forgot about, making a killing or worrying about demand versus supply and all of that. And we just really took it down to home. It's, what do you do? This is a community that needs help and has experienced a major loss event. So it was really cool. If you look up this hashtag, it's called hashtag support the 941. You'll see a lot about that, about the community rallying together and taking care of each other. And I do feel like I want guests to come. I definitely want guests to experience it. But if they were to come, it's not the beautiful Siesta Key, Sarasota, Lido Key, Anna Maria Island that they're used to seeing. We have gone through an event, and our cleanup was extremely fast. We were ready to accept guests into Siesta Key, specifically that key, within the 2 weeks after Milton. So that was an amazing feat, I will tell you that. But yeah, our choice was to continue to serve the local community first. And that's what we did.
That makes sense. That's funny because it's Matt, I think you had made a comment too, because the last time you and I had talked, I think it was either your Boise location or maybe it was Brian's had. I couldn't remember which one it was, but you had a situation very similar to that as well. Maybe you want to talk about that a bit.
Well, we had insurance companies that reach out to us. Our Idaho, Boise does a lot of this already, where we register the properties with the insurance companies. I know a lot of you guys do this already, like ALE or CRS, and you can post your homes up on there because insurance companies are looking for housing for their displaced policyholders. And a lot of times they'll go to Airbnb or Zillow or something like that and try to find something. But another avenue for this in Boise, disaster, local disasters happen all the time, like someone's house floods or something happens to where they just need a new place. And that's, until something is getting rebuilt for them. And that's where I use the ALE and CRS, those two, where you go onto their .com websites and register your homes. So that's what we've done there.
So I'll share with you what happened to us in 2020. So up here in Northern California, we had some big fires that came through in 2020 through the Santa Cruz Mountains. Now, we don't have as much notice as hurricanes do, but you have notice. You can evacuate, and you have notice. The biggest things, as everybody has witnessed on the national level, and it doesn't really change in any area you're at. Fires are dependent on a couple things, right? One is fuel, and then humidity and dryness, and the wind. And the wind can change the direction of the fire in an instant, and it can cause a different situation. Anyway, in 2020, it really ripped through our mountains and completely displaced our mountain residents. And it did at the end of August, and right before Labor Day weekend. We were 100% committed for Labor Day weekend. But it was in one day, we took over 200 and something calls. It was just crazy. It was like triage. We couldn't even keep up with the calls coming in. We couldn't keep up with what people needed. We were just taking names and trying to get a profile of them to see where we could put them, how big was their family, what kind of pets did they have. I mean, when they live in the mountains, they're living with cats and dogs and goats and chickens and guinea pigs and everything. And so it was just crazy. And And my wife Liz and I looked at each other and go, we've got to do something for our community. We can't. What are we going to do? It was obvious to us. Didn't take us but a split second. We got on the phone and we called every single reservation and said, I'm sorry, we cannot honor your Labor Day reservation. Our community is in need and we need to help them. And it was so wonderful. Every single person said, not a problem. Didn't get one complaint. You go help your community. We're seeing what's going on TV. We know that you guys are devastated. And so that opened up 50 units for us to be able to share with our community and give to them. And many of them, due to the permit process, which is a different story and not so fun in Santa Cruz, they stayed with us for up to 3 years in those houses. And some of the owners were like, yep, just as long as we cover our costs and cover this, and we're fine. And so, but what felt really good about it was we were able to, pivot in a pivotal moment and really help our community out. Yeah, and I know that's going on right now down in Southern California because I'm in touch with my friends and I'm in touch with some colleagues and homeowners who live down there and this and that. And we've canceled some reservations up here so the homeowners down there can come stay up here while they got to figure out what to do with their life down there. And I've actually gotten even a few calls from people down there that says, hey, do you have any houses up there? Because even like, Santa Barbara's starting to run out of houses. And as you go farther up the coast, the inventory is starting to get smaller and smaller. And you're talking about hundreds of thousands of people are now displaced for I don't know how long. I really don't. Right. But it's crazy. And so we've gotten a few calls like, hey, can you have anything for 3 to 6 months? We got to kind of just land somewhere and figure out what we're doing. And so we're fielding those calls, and we're 350 miles away. We're quite a ways away. A lot of people don't understand that California is a very big state. So 848 miles long. So it takes a long, it's over 5 hours to get down to LA. But they're still part of I consider them still part of my community because they're part of my state. But that's where I'm at.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And it's really interesting because, we're in Idaho, right? So we're not exactly close to California. I mean, I don't even know how far that is, probably 10-hour drive, if not more. But, again, it's like, how do we as a property management company, how can we help, right? Like those are the kind of things where I think I find it, normally I find it interesting with people that, most people who seem like they just aren't willing, they just don't know how, and I think it's one of those where how do you help a property manager that's in the heat of this with anything, right? Like, and that's kind of the call. It's just saying, hey, you know what? We're all in this together. We're all family. We're VRNation, and we want to help each other. How can a property manager in a different state help property managers that actually need help?
I mean, you look at this, what we're talking about here. Heather has a guide, a standard operating procedure, an SOP that she can share, and that can be adopted, whether it's a forest fire or a hurricane or any natural disaster. We know Tara from talking to her, she has a survival kit, which I think Tara, you're gonna post something on this, right? And so you have that. And for us that are in the mountains where we have, massive snowstorms, rain, and then when you have these forest fires and then it rains, and John knows, then the flooding comes because all of your trees are gone, right? So, and we saw that in Southern Utah when we had the fires back in 2016, 17. So that's how we help. And these stories that we're sharing here, unfortunately, these don't make it to mainstream media when it comes to our industry, short-term rental industry. They're always talking about, parties and that kind of stuff and the negative side of our industry. They're not talking about all of this inventory we have that's short-term. So it's open a lot of the time, or it has options to be open. There's not a renter in there for 12 months at a time, that we can pivot like what John and Liz did and just totally switch it and become, we need to help our community. This is the kind of story I think that needs to be told because we have the tools.
That makes a ton of sense. We all of us have come up with this already, and a lot of people don't know. So we had a conversation. So Tara, you have had to nod at least 3 times now about your kits, and let's take a step back, right? Because the conversation that we had previous to being online was we talked about some of the stuff that Mount Baker sees, right? Because you're up in Washington, the amount of snow that Mount Baker gets is just incredible. So maybe Tara, tell us a little bit about your experience. I mean, it's probably not as, fire or hurricane, but there are issues. Maybe talk a little bit about some of the stuff you face on a day-to-day.
Yeah, a lot of times what we have is with the winter storms that come through is extreme temperatures. One year, 3-4 years ago, we had a summer where it was 109 degrees in August, and we don't really have a lot of air conditioning up in Washington State, let alone in the mountain range. So we had people overheating. And then that same winter, 5 months later, we had temperatures at -9 degrees Fahrenheit. So we had 100-degree swing. And in our little mountain town, sure, we can deal with zero and anything, just below freezing. But when you get into the negatives, we're not completely prepared for that because it's not a typical temperature. So we run into a flooding river, excess snow, extreme wind, and power outages. One thing that we have go out probably every 60 days year round is some sort of wind event and a power outage because we have massive trees in the Pacific Northwest and they just take down our above ground power lines. And our ski resort is at the end of a highway before the Cascade Range. So we are the very last people in Washington State on the west side to get power back. And it's a really small community, and sometimes they go by priority and community size. So we have all the cards stacked against us. So sometimes our power is out for days, and we have diehard skiers and families that saved up for years to take this vacation, and they're not leaving, or they don't have a place to go, or they don't want to go back to Seattle or Vancouver or wherever they came from. So we built power outage kits 10 or 12 years ago and have been refining them and modifying them and changing them up every season. We restock them in the off seasons, and we keep every house without a generator or every condo also stocked with a emergency kit. And it starts out with a 55-quart cooler. So if it is super cold and we have no power, we cannot keep any food outside because of bears. So they all have to go in coolers and locked. So we start out with everything packed in a cooler, in a closet, in the cabin, and it's got everything from headlamps, lanterns, glow sticks, things that they can eat with, from paper plates to disposable silverware cups, coffee cups, and everything, so they don't have to do dishes because we don't have running dishwashers, we don't have hot water, and portable heaters, propane heaters that are rated for indoors to prevent pipes from freezing, keep water running, and creature comforts from coffee so that we can at least have the French presses running and our Pacific Northwesterners can keep their coffee going all day long. Decks of cards, entertainment, what to do with the kids when the lights go out, how to handle, the darkness, possible freezing pipes, what we need to do to prevent damage to the home. And if you're going to shelter in place, our river floods, it floods over the road and people get stuck there. It's a community of maybe 500 or 600 homes. And so you just learn how to adapt to extreme temperatures, wind, trees down, highways blocked, and roads flooded, and keeping power outage kits. It doesn't make your stay comfortable when you're on vacation and you have no power, but it at least sends a message to the guests that, look, we care. This is what we're trying to do. We're being proactive. You've got backup batteries, you've got lights, you've got lanterns. So at least you can get around. If you need to, check out, this is what we can do for you. The other thing we have to keep at our office, because there is no cell phone service, and when the Wi-Fi goes down, we have zero communication whatsoever, and 12 employees that run around and take care of guests, is walkie-talkies, long-range walkie-talkies. Fortunately, everything we have is within a 3-mile radius. So the walkie-talkies do work, but communication, when you work in a community with no cell phone service and your Wi-Fi is down, is challenging, but essential.
Right.
That sounds like that's a subsidiary company called Extreme Vacations of Luxury Rental.
I was going to say, we don't have any of these problems out in Island Park. I mean, if anybody's looking for a safe vacation.
No, I mean, occasionally the end of our pier snaps off and floats off into the Pacific, but hey, we just rebuild the pier.
That's right. Oh, wow. We just have grizzly bears, and we really, there's not much we can do to help people with that. I mean, it's like lock your door. Unfortunately, but yeah, no, it's funny because just being where I'm at, as far as I'm not going to say sheltered. We do have our annoyances, right? We used to have these things I think were like really catastrophic, and now I'm realizing our annoyances because we can still get through them. People can still come and go. But yeah, these are great stories, you guys, and I think it really falls back into the point of why we were having this topic today. And it was really like, well, how do we have people understand best how to prepare as a property manager? Like, what kind of, I'm not going to say code, but ideally, like, what set of guidelines should you follow? And I think, some of the underlying things that I heard, obviously having procedures in place, right? So just know, like, it could and will happen, have the procedures in place so that your employees understand what to do, in lieu of anything, right? You're still going to be there. You're still going to be, but as long as they can see it, read it, and understand it, there's something in the back of their minds that will kick into emergency mode. So I think that was a really good point to call out. I think other things, again, like preparation for, for these types of emergency. I mean, Tara, like, it's funny because you're talking about, 55-gallon cooler and then having like a kit on the inside of it. Like that's an investment. Right. I mean, a lot of people from a property management perspective would be like, well, when we look at these things, I mean, are these the things that you're paying for as a property manager, or are these things that you would have a homeowner pay for as part of their offer?
No, I pay for them. I own them. I stock them. I maintain them. And then every property is a little bit different. So our properties with gas ranges, gas cooktops, they don't get I call them omelet stations, but they don't get the single burner camp stoves that to cook with. And every property is, a little bit unique on whether it has a wood burning fireplace or a wood stove or gas range, or if it just needs a basic kit. But I own it all. I maintain it all. And it's just a part of our service. Gotcha.
And I think ultimately, John, the one takeaway from listening to you and, John and I have known each other, which is 2 years now.
Yeah.
And we always like to hypothesize over a good bottle of wine. But, the one thing that I took away, and I know this about John as a person, is that the humanity factor in, sometimes businesses just got to take a back seat to taking care of your neighbors. And as we all know, in the short-term rental industry, right, we have our fair share of opponents, which is unfortunate, because I think a lot of people who are opposed to short-term rentals don't really fully understand the industry, and they don't understand who's really in the property management seat. And what John was calling out was things like calling up guests and saying, hey, you know what, I'm sorry, we're going to have to cancel or reschedule your stay. We have an emergency. We have to take care of our neighbors. That type of statement is really, it really shows grit, and it shows integrity. So I think it's something that's really important to call out. I mean, all of these are really good lessons, you guys, and I don't want to just hog the spotlight here. Is there anything I missed? Any other takeaways you guys want to make sure that our listeners hear?
I just want to say that's why I love VRNation. That's why I wanted to be part. And Tara knows I fought really hard to be part of the board. But I really do love the fact that VRNation is built by property managers for property managers. And I think the most important thing about this podcast that I am loving, and I definitely want to convey this message, is that we need to be there for each other. This is still yet kind of sort of a grassroots industry, and none of us here, because we're all old school here, right? We've all started a long time ago. None of us here really have had a playbook, a manual. Nothing was given to us. We literally had to just create what we have now from nothing more than just our human heart, and what we thought was right. And having to juggle guests and owners and all that, like, it really does put into perspective what's important in life. So I just want to say, I love the fact that VRNation is set up to create resources for those who are just getting into the industry, or maybe they're changing their portfolio significantly, or maybe they're just wanting to make a change that's impactful in their community because they want to help. So giving these types of resources, like the playbook for hurricane protocol that could be adopted for other things, or a survival kit. I mean, I don't know. If I were a listener and I had just gotten into this industry A few years ago, I might be thinking to myself, oh my gosh, let me just have that. That's an important, like, I want to learn that. I want to know that. I want to adopt that for my own company. And there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't be sharing those things. This is not about competition or trying to keep things proprietary. This is about best practice. This is about VRNation starting a movement for best practice in our industry. And I think that the people who are listening to this podcast right now are only worried about that. And that is a beautiful thing. And that just,
Yeah.
I couldn't echo that anymore. I was going to go down a very similar road, Heather. So that was awesome that you brought that to the table. It is the most selfless industry I've ever been in with regards to community and sharing. And I've been in the restaurant business, and I've been in the construction business, and I've been in the transportation business. And I've found something in this community that I have never found in any of the other ones. Come close, but the camaraderie, the willingness to share best practices without worrying about whether or not it's going to be a detriment to your operations or be used against you or whatever have you. We all understand that we're in this together, and that, as our current president in the middle down there, Matt, is fond of saying, a rising tide floats all boats. And it is true. If we're all in it together and we're all sharing best practices, we're only going to make our community better, and we're only going to make the whole industry better as a whole. And I hope the people that are listening to this, I hope that's your biggest takeaway, that when you go to these conferences, and there's a lot of them, that and you hear this over and over, that a large part of the best part of the conferences for many of them is the networking and is sharing the best practices. And I've heard that for, 15 years now. I really have, since I've been going to VRNA since 2014. So it's been great. And I'm really glad to have met all of you. You've been a great part of the family.
Well, good. Well, let me jump in real quick, you guys, because we don't want us to keep going. I mean, obviously, our meetings can last a long time. One thing I do want to remember to do is we have people watching. So first off, thank you all for watching and joining us. We'd love to have everybody here. But, the thing is that what we want to learn is, what challenges are you facing as a user, as a property manager? What are things that you would love to hear or learn more about? I've been a part of a couple sessions with new property managers, and some of the questions they have, I mean, I've only been in this industry for, 2-3 years, and it's like, I can answer some of those questions. Like, oh man, I remember when I had that question, and John gave me some insight, and Tara gave me some insight. And it's, these are the kind of things that we would love to hear from you. So we don't want to assume that everybody knows what we know. Just please, if you have questions, you can submit them multiple ways. You can submit them to info@vrnation.com. You can go to any of our social media platforms and you can submit them as a question. Or you can go to our website, vrnation.com. There's a contact us button there as well. So please, 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 if you have questions, reach out to us. And of course, on YouTube, we would love it if you would subscribe and follow. And again, feedback is always warranted. If you want to hear less of me and more of Tara, please, be gentle. Be gentle with me, because
I agree with that. I'm going to make that.
That's right. That's right.
Jamie.
Right.
To mention YouTube, I did film just yesterday what was in the emergency preparedness kit. I went through the whole thing. It's going up on YouTube in the next day or so. So that will be on there, and it will go on socials when I can learn to speak faster and get it in under a minute, because it was a longer video than I thought. So I will try and re-record it and make it a quickie, and then I can also post the list, the inventory, and all the tips and tricks that we give our guests on what to do in the event of emergency, how to handle the kiddos, what happens when the lights go out, how do we reach out to you, how do you communicate when there's actually no cell phone service whatsoever, no internet, no Wi-Fi, no power, and what we do to service our guests and our community. So that will go up on YouTube soon.
That's terrific. Well, I'll tell you what, you guys, I've had a blast talking to everybody. As always, regard you all as close friends. So to our guests, thank you again for joining us. And thank you for everybody joining me. And we will have our next episode shooting next week. I believe we have it scheduled for next week. So if you have any questions, thoughts, or concerns, or just want to, shoot the breeze, please reach out. But thanks everyone for joining us here at VRNation, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Guys.
Take care.